Welcome to presentation on the Employees Compensation Act 1923 as amended through Employees Compensation Amendment Act 2017 by RAVI PRAKASH MATHUR, Senior Lecturer, Mechanical Engineering Department, Government Polytechnic College, Jodhpur. Object of the Act. The Workmen Compensation Act 1923 came in force in 1924. The word workman substituted by employee by an amendment through Act number 45 of year 2009. Earlier, there was no law of payment of compensation except in class of fatal accident. fatal accident अर्थात खतरनाक दुर्घटनाओं के अतिरिक्त कोई और प्रावधान नहीं था जिससे कि क्षतिपूर्ति की जाती थी। और जिस प्रकार से इंडस्ट्रीज की ग्रोथ हुई उससे खतरों का बढ़ाव ने यह नेसेसिटी डेवलप की कि कुछ विशेष प्रकार के एक्ट्स डेवलप किए जाने चाहिए जिससे कि श्रमिकों को उनकी क्षतिपूर्ति की राहत मिल सके। इम्पॉर्टेंट डेफिनेशंस। डिपेंडेंट अर्थात आश्रित। डिपेंडेंट मीन्स एनी ऑफ द फॉलोइंग रिलेटिव्स ऑफ डिसीज्ड अर्थात जिसकी डेथ हो गई हो वो एम्प्लॉई, नेमली नंबर 1 widow, minor legitimate or adopted son, an unmarried legitimate or adopted daughter or a widow mother, and if wholly dependent on the earning of the employee at the time of his death, a son or a daughter who has attained the age of 18 years and who is infirm. Third, if wholly or in part dependent on the earnings of the employee at the time of his death, a widower, etc. Wages, including any privilege or benefit which is capable of being estimated in money other than travelling allowances or the value of any travelling concession or contributions जो कि एम्प्लॉयर द्वारा पीएफ या अन्य प्रकार की योजनाओं के लिए एम्प्लॉयज़ के लिए किए जाते हैं वो इसके अंतर्गत काउंट नहीं होते हैं। बोनस, डीएनएस अलाउंस इसमें काउंट होता है, लेकिन मैटरनिटी बेनिफिट्स और एनुअल लीव विद वेजेस इसमें इंक्लूड नहीं होते हैं। एम्प्लॉयर्स लायबिलिटी फॉर कंपनसेशन अर्थात जो नियोजक है उसकी क्षतिपूर्ति के लिए क्या क्या दायित्व हैं उसके बारे में। इफ़ पर्सनल इंजरी इज कॉज्ड टू एम्प्लॉय by accident arising out of and if the course of his employment, his employer shall be liable to pay compensation in accordance with the provisions of the Act. The employer shall not be liable in the case in respect of any injury which does not result in the total or partial disablement of the employee for a period exceeding 3 days. Second, in respect of any injury not resulting in death or permanent total disablement caused by an accident which is directly attributed to the employee having been at the time thereof under the influence of drink or drugs अर्थात उसने कोई नशा कर रखा हो तो ऐसी परिस्थितियों में क्षतिपूर्ति का दावा नहीं किया जा सकेगा। The willful disobedience of the employee of an order expressly given or to a truly expressly framed for the purpose of securing the safety of employee or the willful removal of disregard by the employee of any safety guard or other devices which he knew to have been provided for the purpose of securing the safety अर्थात यदि कोई सुरक्षा के नियमों का पालन श्रमिक नहीं करता है या वह अपनी सुरक्षा डिवाइसेस का उपयोग नहीं करता है तो ऐसी दशा में वह कंपनसेशन पाने का अधिकारी नहीं होगा। पार्शियल डिसेबलमेंट अर्थात आंशिक डिसेबलमेंट में ये मीनिंग है, इट मीन्स वेयर द डिसेबलमेंट ऑफ ए टेम्परेरी नेचर सच डिसेबलमेंट एज reduces the earning capacity of employee in any employment in which he was engaged at the time of the accident resulting in the disablement अर्थात ये किसी पर्टिकुलर एम्प्लॉयमेंट की स्थिति में डिसेबलमेंट की स्थिति है permanent disablement, where the disablement is of a permanent nature. Such disablement as reduces his earning capacity in every employment which he was capable of undertaking at that time. मतलब जो काम वो कर रहा है उसके अलावा भी अगर वो कोई काम कर सकता था उनके लिए भी यदि वह डिसेबल हो जाता है, अयोग्य हो जाता है, तो उसको परमानेंट डिसेबलमेंट की श्रेणी में कहा जाता है. परंतु इसके अंतर्गत क्लॉज और है कि शेल बी डीम टू रिजल्ट इन परमानेंट पार्शियल डिसेबलमेंट अकॉर्डिंग टू द पार्ट सेकेंड ऑफ शेड्यूल 1 में जो चीज़ दिए हैं वो उसके अनुसार फॉलो किया जाएगा. अमाउंट ऑफ कंपनसेशन. एन अमाउंट ऑफ कंपनसेशन payable depends on the nature of injury resulting into loss of earning capacity and the average monthly wages of the employee concerned. Schedule 1 and Schedule 4 of the Act gives detail for calculation of compensation. Schedule 2 of this Act gives the list of persons who are included in definition of employee. Schedule 3 to the Act gives the list of occupational diseases. Compensation for occupational diseases, such which is caused by the nature of person's work or the conditions in which he works, must have been performed. Subject to provisions of the Act, the amount of compensation shall be as follows. Number 1. Where death result and from the injury, an amount equal to 50% of the monthly wages of the deceased employee multiplied by the relevant factor, or an amount of rupees 1.2 lakh, whichever is more. Secondly, where the permanent total disablement results from the injury, an amount equal to 60% of the monthly wages of the injured employee multiplied by a relevant factor, rupees 1.2 lakh, whichever is more. The permanent partial disablement result from the injury. In the case of an injury specified in Part 2 of Schedule 1, such percentage of the compensation which would have been payable in the case of permanent total disablement as is specified therein, being the percentage of the loss of earning capacity caused by that injury. In the case of injury not specified in Schedule 1, such percentage of compensation payable in the case of permanent total disablement as is proportionate to the loss of earning capacity which may be assessed by a qualified medical practitioner permanently caused by the injury. Fourth category, where temporary disablement, whether total or partial, result from the injury, a half monthly payment of the sum equivalent to 25% of monthly wages of the employee to be paid in accordance with the provisions. Compensation should be paid employer when it is due. Employer may be required to pay penalty for default. Method of calculating wages, where the employee has, during a continuous period of not less than 12 months immediately preceding the accident, been in the service of the employer who is liable to pay compensation, the monthly wages of the employee shall be 1/12 of the total wages which have fallen due to payment to him by employer in the last 12 months of the period. Where the whole of the continuous period of service immediately preceding to the accident during which the employee was in the service of the employer who is liable to pay the compensation was less than 1 month, the monthly wages of the employer shall be the average monthly amount which during the 12th month immediately preceding the accident was being earned by an employee employed on the same work by the same employer, or if there was no employee so employed by an employer employed on similar work in the same locality. In other cases, the monthly wages shall be 30 times the total wages earned in respect of the last continuous period of service immediately preceding the accident from the employer who is liable to pay compensation divided by the number of days comprising such period. Distribution of compensation. No payment of compensation in respect of an employee whose injury has resulted in death, and no payment of a lump sum as compensation to a woman or a person under legal disability shall be made otherwise than by deposit with the Commissioner. In the case of a deceased employee, an employer may make to any dependent advances on account of compensation on an amount equal to the 3 months' wages of such employee, and so much so such amount as does not exceed the compensation payable to the dependent shall be deducted by the Commissioner from such compensation and repaid to the employer. Notice and claim. Any accident resulting in serious body injury or death should be reported to the Commissioner within 7 days. No claim for compensation shall be entitled by a Commissioner unless notice of the accident has been given in the manner hereinafter provided as soon as practicable after the happening thereof, and unless the claim is presented before him within 2 years of the occurrence of the accident, or in the case of death within 2 years from the date of the death. Power to require from employees statements regarding fatal accidents. Where a Commissioner receives information from any source that an employee has died as a result of an accident arising out of and in the course of his employment, he may send by registered post a notice to the employee's employer, require him to submit within 30 days of the service of the notice a statement in the prescribed form giving the circumstances attending the death of employee and indicating whether, in the opinion of the employer, he is or is not able to deposit compensation on account of the death. The employer is of opinion that he is liable to deposit compensation, he shall make the deposit within 30 days of the service of the notice. If the employer is of the opinion that he is not liable to deposit compensation, he shall in his statement indicate the grounds on which he disclaims liability. Where the employer has not disclaimed liability, the Commissioner, after such inquiry as he may think fit, may inform any of the dependents of deceased employee that it is open to the dependents to prefer a claim for compensation, and may give them such other further information as he may think fit. Medical examination. Where an employee has given notice of an accident, he shall, if the employer, before the expiry of 3 days from the time at which service of the notice has been effected, offers to have him examined free of charge by a qualified medical practitioner, submit himself for such examination, or any employee who is in receipt of half monthly payment under the Act shall, if so required, submit himself for such examination from time to time, otherwise employee forfeit his right of compensation. Contracting. Where any principal employer engage contractor fully or partially, the principal employer shall be liable to pay to any employee employed in the execution of the work any compensation which he would have been liable to pay if the employee had been immediately employed by him. And where compensation is claimed from the principal employer, this act shall apply as if references to the principal employer were substituted for reference to the employer, except that the amount of compensation shall be calculated with reference to the wages of employee under the employer by whom he is immediately employed. Power of Commissioner to require further deposit in cases of fatal accident. Where any sum has been deposited by an employer as compensation payable in respect of employee whose injury has resulted in death, and in the opinion of the Commissioner such sum is insufficient, the Commissioner may, by notice in writing stating his reasons, call upon the employer to show cause why he should not make a further deposit, which within such time as may be stated in the notice. Titles of important schedules of this Act. Schedule number 1, having two parts. Part first, list of injuries deemed to result in permanent total disablement. Part second, list of injuries deemed to result in permanent partial disablement. Schedule 2, list of persons who are included in the definition of employees. Schedule 3, list of occupational diseases. Schedule 4, factor for working out lump sum equivalent of compensation amount in case of permanent disablement and death. Thank you.